we need to reduce the amount of sustained talk. So we want them to talk about change and all of those positive aspects of change. But if we are hearing a lot of sustained talk, which is what I was getting from Macy around her relationship with her mom, it's the but part of the yes, but. Sustained talk is the flip side of change talk. So sustained talk can include a desire to not change. It could be where they talk about a lack of confidence or inability to make that change. Oh, I can't do that. I don't see how I could. It includes where they talk about reasons to not change. They may talk about how not changing benefits them or how making that change would cost them. And they just may feel like it's just not that important. So there isn't that sense of urgency. Like, I'll deal with that later. It's not that important right now. So that's sustained talk. And so what I was getting from Macy are statements that, I'm not sure that I can do that. She seemed reluctant to talk about what she could do to change because she's perceiving that unless her mom starts to make any changes, that she's not going to make any changes. So her reason to not actually address or try to improve the relationship with her mom is that I'm not going to be the only one putting forth the effort. And I think in particular that she felt that it wouldn't do any good, that if she made efforts to be different, that her fear is that mom still isn't going to change. She still won't react differently. And I've put forth this effort for nothing, right? And that can be very demoralizing. When a person feels like they've put in a lot of work and effort into a relationship and it feels kind of one-sided, that's very demoralizing. That's very depressing and contributes to feelings of hopelessness. Macy wants to decrease her anxiety. So one strategy I'm going to describe that I use with Macy is envisioning the change. So this can be helpful when they seem stuck, although they are interested in some kind of change. So again, she wants things to be better, but she's stuck on blaming and complaining about her mother. So I ask her to imagine whatever barriers are there in her relationship with her mom. Imagine those barriers were removed. What would things be like if you took your mother out of the equation and you let go of your kind of resentment towards her? What would that be like? So I'm trying to imagine, I want her to envision essentially the benefit of getting along better with her mom. So I think it's a good question. However, the response I got from her was, I can't. So sometimes that happens, right? And that is where motivational interviewing is very client-centered, that there can't be a curriculum to this because it's going to depend on what the client says. And so I'm going to have to try some other strategies here. So what I'm going to present are a few strategies that we can use when there is that sustained talk. So it's nice when they're open and talkative and that, she's going to tell me about how things would be better with her mom and she's going to develop this confidence and that, I think my mom and I can fix this. That may not be that easy, right? So in reality, and I'm dealing with a teenager here, is that I got sustained talk from her. So her saying, I can't imagine it, basically is what she's saying. Now I need to decide how I'm going to respond to that. And so we don't want to purposefully evoke sustained talk. So in this approach, we're not going to ask questions like, why won't you change? Which is an open-ended question, but that's going to evoke sustained talk. If I said, why won't you change? That contributes to the person kind of digging their heels in about not changing. But instead, what we want to do is we still need to soften that sustained talk. So while we want to cultivate change talks, we want to ask questions that evoke desire for change, ability to change, reasons for change. When we get sustained talk, and particularly I noticed that her statement was just sustained, there wasn't any change talk in there. A lot of times when there is ambivalence, you'll hear both the change talk and the sustained talk maybe in one sentence. It's the yes, but. If we get the change talk, then we can focus on the change talk, but I didn't get any. This is sustained talk. I can't. So we want to soften it, as they call it. So one way to do that is to reflect it back. So there's a couple of different kinds of reflections that we could do that acknowledges what they just said. So again, we don't really want to reinforce, and we definitely don't want to evoke sustained talk as much as possible. But since I did get that from her, we do acknowledge it to help her to feel that I am hearing her. So I could use a simple or complex reflection. So I might say, yeah, it's hard for you to imagine. Or I could try, which is what I ended up doing, an amplified reflection. So this is used when there is sustained talk and we amplify or kind of exaggerate the sustained talk. And the hope is that they are going to naturally resist it, that we are expecting that psychological reactance to happen. So my hope is that if I said something like, there's no way you can imagine feeling anything different. So it's a reflection, it's a statement. I'm not asking her, and I'm doing it in a way that's just neutral, right? So it's not meant to be sarcastic in any way, but it's me like saying, I'm right here with you, and this is what I'm hearing you say, right? There's no way you can imagine feeling anything different. So my hope is that she's going to say, well, maybe start to think about it, right? She's a teenager. I'm hoping she's going to rebel a little bit against me, but she doesn't. So that is the risk that we take with an amplified reflection, is that they go, yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. So she says, I'll tell you, I'll remind you of the reflection. There's no way you can imagine feeling anything different. And she says, not as long as she acts like she does. So when that happens, I can try another softening sustained talk strategy, which is a running head start. And so that means that now that she's started with sort of the excuses, I'm going to list out the other excuses that either I've heard her say or I imagine that she might say in that situation, to kind of air it out, right? It's like, let's get this all on the table and kind of get it done, right? Get it over with. So I might say something like, yeah, it feels like you're doing all of the work and you're afraid that, if you let go, if you change, that lets your mom off the hook for having to do anything different. So it's kind of a complex reflection, I guess, in that situation. But I've used that strategy, particularly in other kinds of family preservation, for example, where I'm dealing with a parent who's been ordered to participate in counseling. And, they might feel like they're the ones being blamed for their child's actions or behaviors. So in that situation, if the parent says, I don't even know why I have to be here, Tommy's the one that needs to change, right? So it is still an empathic response because it's acknowledging that, yeah, you're feeling blame for what's happened. You've got different people in your business trying to tell you how to run your family. You've got sessions to attend that takes time out from your work. And it's really kind of a burden to have to do all of this, something like that. So I'm listing out all of those reasons why, yeah, this kind of stinks for you. So that is the running head start. And so I can get all of that out there and see what Macy says to that. So softening sustained talk strategies can include using some kind of reflection. And then I might combine it with another strategy, such as the running head start. The reflections can be either simple, which is kind of stating the obvious. That's essentially what I did when I said it's hard for you to imagine, because she had simply said, I can't. She essentially was saying, I can't imagine things being different with my mom. And I'm just saying, yeah, that's hard to imagine. A more complex reflection was more like when I did the running head start, which was to say, yeah, it feels like you're doing all of this work. And if you are the one who makes concessions and makes changes, it feels like it's letting your mom off the hook. So it provides a little bit more interpretation. A complex reflection does go deeper than what the person just said on the surface, that it does make some kind of guesses about what they really mean.